and see if we can get this bad boy going. Hello, YouTube. It looks like you are live now. I'm having a lot of technical issues with YouTube here. Video is frozen. Which video here? The video on Facebook is frozen? No. Marlissa, hello, hello. Somebody tell me, is the video on Facebook frozen? Is that what you said, Norma? Because if I'm frozen, I mean, I can't fix that issue if it's frozen on Facebook. This is the device I always record on Facebook. Is it really frozen? Because I'd be like really frozen. But anyway, welcome, 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 YouTube. Welcome, Facebook. Welcome, Twitch. We're going to get this show on the road. And I got a great one here today, you guys. And here we go. Not now, working now. Great, perfect. Here we go, you guys. A new study says asymptomatic transmission of 9-1 DIVOC is a myth. Find out the details here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you can engage live in the content. You got to go follow me. I'm right here on Instagram. Jimmy Rants is how you find the show over on Instagram. Go check us out. We're here Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Thank you so much for being here today. We also simulcast on Twitch, Facebook, and on YouTube. I would love for a bunch of you to go try Twitch, which is a free app that you download. And then once you're there, look up the name Jimmy Moore Rants and you'll find it. It's a really nice format. It's got an open chat that I would love to see more people involved in. So if you're watching and you have trouble with whatever you're watching on, try the Twitch app. Again, Jimmy Moore Rants. I think it's twitch.tv /Jimmy Moore if you want to watch it on a computer. So go check that out. Otherwise, we are always here on the Instagram feed, Jimmy Rants. And if you missed the live, you can watch it on the replay right here on the Instagram feed, IGTV for Jimmy Rants. Go check that out after the show. We also put the past episodes up over on YouTube. Type in the keyword Jimmy Rants. You'll find the show. Finally, go to JimmyRants.com. It's the official website for this show. And we put all the past episodes up there. Well, welcome back from the holidays. Hope you enjoyed your Christmas holiday season. I had a great weekend. Pretty much was by myself, but talked to a lot of friends and was able to connect virtually. That's kind of the fun part of living in the modern day is we have all these tools and technology that connects us as a society when we can't be in person with one another. So Christmas was good. Yesterday was my birthday, so I was able to celebrate it and had some really nice comments on all of my social media. So thank you to everyone who left comments. But we're back today, and we've got a full slate of just amazing shows to do for you this week. I'm going to give you a quick preview, and then we'll get into today's show. So today I have a new study about asymptomatic people transmitting this virus thing out there. Today, it's bogus according to a new study. Tomorrow, we're going to question and have some questions for what we're going to do with all these people getting injured by the V word, because there's a lot of healthcare professionals primarily who are taking this V word and they're having some really bad reactions to it. What's the FDA? What's Dr. Fauci? What are they going to do with these two V words that are causing so much injury? So I've got a nice little article on that. On Wednesday, there's a new study by Lucia Aronica, Jeff Folick, Angela Poff, and Dominic D'Agostino, some big names in the keto world, all about personalizing your ketogenic diet based on your genetics. So that's kind of cool. And then Thursday, there is a move now to persuade you to take the V word. And they've got the psychology that they're trying to employ on you guys, all of us actually, of how they're going to take the V word. And then, of course, Friday will be Ask Me Anything. And yes, it is New Year's on Friday, but I have a feeling there will be enough people around that we could have a nice show on Friday for Ask Me Anything. So that's the lineup this week on Jimmy Rants. Thank you guys for joining. New to the show, I'm Jimmy Moore. We basically talk about whatever's interesting to me. Usually it's something in the topic of nutritional health. I like to read studies and break them down, like the one I have today. I like to also look at cultural things that are out there and give opinions on that. I love a lot of mindset types of things as well. So stick around. If you're new to Jimmy Rants, we love doing this show. We love to have a good time. It's definitely interactive. So I do my rant and then I come to you guys and get your opinion. So if something piques your interest, I'm in what you have to say. So please, please come on in and join the conversation. So today, guys, I have a study that I'm going to cite here that unfortunately, in the zeitgeist of what we've been going through this past year, we have been told that we need to beware of going out in public without a mask on because you could be spreading the virus unbeknownst to you. And of course, to logical thinking people, that has never made sense. What do you mean I'm spreading a virus? I'm not sick. Yeah, but you're an asymptomatic spreader of the disease. And I'm thinking, in the history of disease, how many times have we seen people that showed no signs of a disease easily spreading this disease to other people that they're not showing any signs of? Think about that for a moment. Really, like, think about that. Have we ever had any other disease that you know of that you kind of have to be tested to know if you have it sometimes because you're so asymptomatic, and that you're highly contagious, even though you're not coughing up and snotting up stuff that would get particles in the air and da-da-da? I mean, I suppose it's plausible you could pass it on, but they've been making us freak out that, oh, so asymptomatic are the worst in the world. Oh my gosh, they're spreading it worse than people that actually have COVID-19 with symptoms. Oh my God. And they've tried to scare us half to death, which kind of begs the question. Now we've got the V word out there and people are taking the V word to ostensibly inoculate themselves, but aren't they now technically asymptomatic of 9-1 DIVOC? And yet they have 9-1 DIVOC in their body. So how are they not going to spread the disease? Okay, that's a side note, but I have the actual study. There's been a study looking at this so-called asymptomatic spread of 9-1 DIVOC. And again, those of you new, 9-1 DIVOC, do it backwards. What's it spell? Yeah, that's what we're talking about. It should be self-evident by now, but it's become my moniker for how to do this without getting all of the censorship online. So that's how we do it. But they did this study because they wanted to test this so-called asymptomatic transmission of 9-1 DIVOC. And they looked at 10 million people in this study who were asymptomatic of 9-1 DIVOC. And it took place in Wuhan, China, which was like the epicenter of where all this supposedly began. And so they had 10 million people that were asymptomatic, tested positive for 9-1 DIVOC. And what they found was, of the 10 million people who were tested, it was technically 9,899,828 people. But of that number of people, between May 14th and June the 5th, did the screening. And of that 10 million, guess how many actually had tested positive of the 10 million that were supposedly asymptomatic cases? That they actually confirmed, yeah, you've got it. 300. 300 out of 10 million. Like 300. Alexa, what is 300 divided by 10 million?
300 divided by 10 million is 0.0000.
0.00003. Alexa, stop. She keeps talking. So it's 0.00003%. That is like so minuscule, it's not even funny. And they said that the only 300 cases of supposedly transmitting it as an asymptomatic case. 300 out of 10 million. Why are we bellyaching about asymptomatic people? So this was published in the journal, by the way, Nature Communications, which I have a copy of the paper I will get to here in a minute. And 19 scientists, mainly from the Huazhong University of Science and Technology in Wuhan, China, but also from scientific institutions all across China, as well as in the UK and Australia. It focused specifically on the people living in the city of Wuhan, ground zero for COVID-19. In screening, I know 9-1 DIVOC, took part in a screening program between May 14th and June the 1st, which provided clear results to the possibility of there being asymptomatic transmission of this virus. Asymptomatic transmission has been an underlying justification for the lockdowns. This is why it matters, guys. So many decisions are being made all about this virus based on this so-called asymptomatic transmission. This is why people go into stores and they wear a mask. This is why people are scared half to death of their fellow human, because they think they're going to get infected by another human being. And so it's great that they did this study. The problem is they've already given a lot of these powers to these government entities to justify lockdowns. And there's many states here in America that have used it. California, Michigan, New Jersey, New York. I mean, I could go down the line, Virginia, all these states that have decided to lock people down. And the new presidential administration has promised that he's going to be very strict about these kinds of things too, to get this, quote, under control. But this new study kind of pushes back on that. The most recent guidance from the Centers for Disease Control states that the virus can be spread by people who do not have symptoms. That's right on the website right now of the CDC. In fact, the CDC claims that asymptomatic people are estimated to account for more than 50% of transmissions. Now, what was that stat I just quoted to you? 0.00003%? That's far cry from 50%. And yet they're trying to make it look like if you don't have symptoms, oh, you could be sick, but I'm not sick. Oh, but you could pass it on as an asymptomatic transmitter. That makes no damn sense at all. Like, it never has made any logical sense. The UK Health Secretary Matt Hancock also was promoting this message, explaining that the concept of asymptomatic spread of 9-1 DIVOC was what led to the UK advocating masks and referring to the problem of asymptomatic transmission. So if you're just joining us, I am reading about a brand new study published in the journal Nature Communications, and it's all about asymptomatic spread of 9-1 DIVOC. Is it real? Is it not real? And they're finding that of the 10 million people, they looked at 10 million people in Wuhan, China, 10 million people who were asymptomatic carriers of 9-1 DIVOC. Of the 10 million, they only transmitted it to 300 people, which is 0.00003% transmission rate, which means 99.99997% it's not transmitting. I don't know about you, 99.99997% is pretty damn good odds. I'll take those on pretty much anything in my life. Pretty much anything. This new study, which we'll get to here in a minute, debunks that concept of asymptomatic transmission. It stated that out of the nearly 10 million people, 300 asymptomatic cases were found. Contact tracing was then carried out. Of those 300, no cases of 9-1 DIVOC were detected in any of the people that were exposed to these people who had 9-1 DIVOC. There were a total of 1,174 close contacts of the asymptomatic positive cases traced, and they all tested negative for the virus. Both the asymptomatic patients and their contacts were placed in isolation for 2 weeks, and the results were exactly the same. Think of all the people who have had to quarantine and they were asymptomatic the entire time, didn't lose their smell or taste, didn't have any cold symptoms. They're just sitting, and because of the protocol, you were contact traced, you had to be in quarantine for 2 weeks. I think it's down to 10 days now, but 2 weeks in quarantine because you supposedly got close to someone who's been diagnosed with 9-1 DIVOC, but you never had any symptoms. Now, they never even test these people. Do you have 9-1 DIVOC? And I've been thinking about and watching all of these football players, college and professional this year, that one guy on the team gets it. I remember one team, I forget which one, but one team, I think it was the Cleveland Browns, their entire starting wide receivers, all 4 of them, were contact traced because one of them got 9-1 DIVOC. So all 4 of them were out of their game yesterday that they played in the NFL. And it's it's just ridiculous if these guys aren't sick. Why are we quarantining people that are not sick? None of the detected positive cases or their close contacts became symptomatic, nor did they have any newly confirmed 9-1 DIVOC during the isolation period. And you would think if the so-called asymptomatic transmission were true, that we would see a whole lot more cases of this happening, but it's not. Further evidence showed that virus cultures in the positive and repositive asymptomatic cases were all negative, indicating that there was no viable virus in positive cases that were detected in the study. They couldn't find it, guys. It wasn't there, which begs the question, if this is the justification for why they are locking us all up in our homes on lockdown, why are we believing them anymore? Right? I'm ready for people to start thinking logically about this. And I don't think we've done enough logic thinking on any of this the entire time. And I think we're coming up on the 1 year of being through all this. I hope people with common sense wake up and look at what's happening. I mean, you do you, boo, and you figure out how to take care of yourself and make sure you're taken care of. But at the end of the day, if they're justifying keeping people locked down, if they're justifying not opening up businesses because of the so-called asymptomatic transmission of this virus, they're going to have to come up with something else, because this ain't it. Ages of those found to be asymptomatic were between the ages of 10 and 89. So they had a nice cross-section of ages from children all the way to very old. The asymptomatic positive rate being lowest in children under the age of 17 and the highest rate amongst those over 60. The study also made the realization that due to a weakening of the virus itself, newly infected persons were more likely to be asymptomatic and have a lower viral load than earlier infected cases. And that's interesting. As this thing has gone along, it's become weaker. So that even if you were a carrier of 9-1 DIVOC and you had no symptoms, if you were to pass it on to someone else, it would be a portion of that whatever's in your body. It wouldn't even be the full viral load. They're not going to really have any detectable signs of the virus. These results are not without precedent, though. Back in June, Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove, the head of the World Health Organization's Emerging Diseases and Zoonosis Unit, shed doubt upon asymptomatic transmission. Even Dr. Fauci, I remember seeing a video, this was many months ago now, but I remember seeing a video where somebody was interviewing him about the asymptomatic cases. He's like, oh, it's very rare that we see asymptomatic transmission of a virus. Generally, it's only people showing symptoms of the virus that tends to spread said virus. And I'm going, but the justifications for locking people down is all predicated on asymptomatic transmitters of the virus. Is anybody else over the duplicity of all of this year? No mask. Don't wear a mask. That's not going to help you with this. Oh, you need to wear a mask. Oh, asymptomatic transmission is, oh man, that's the worst part of this whole thing. Oh, asymptomatic? No, you're not going to pass this on. back and forth and back and forth. And it gets so frustrating to the lay public who's just trying to do what's right, trying to take care of themselves and their family and be protected. And yet all they've done is made it more convoluted than they needed to. And sometimes I think they're flying by the seat of their pants with all this stuff. From the data we have, it still seems to be very rare that an asymptomatic person actually will transmit onward to a secondary individual. She then repeated the words, "It's very rare." And despite the word choice of rare, they could not point to any singular case of asymptomatic transmission, noting that numerous reports were not finding secondary transmission onward. I would love it, and this is one study, but I would love it for other studies to happen here in America where they say there's hot spots here in America. Go to those hot spots and let's do this exact same study. Let's look at people who've been diagnosed with 9-1 DIVOC, which I could get into all the problems with the PCR test. I probably will do a future Jimmy Rants just on the PCR test and the flaws. I've touched on it a little bit here and there, but I need to do a whole episode just on that. But let's assume they're accurate and they're true. Let's do a study of all those people who test positive that are asymptomatic, and then contact trace those people, and let's see, of the people that they were in contact with, how many of them test positive for 9-1 DIVOC. And you're going to be shocked how it's going to be a whole lot of nothing, even though they tell us this thing is spreading like wildfire because of asymptomatic transmission. If you're just joining us, welcome to Jimmy Rants. Welcome to Monday. Hope you had a great holiday weekend. We are here today with an episode all about a brand new study that just came out. And it says there is no such thing. It just doesn't exist of asymptomatic spread of 9-1 DIVOC. I've got the paper we'll look at here in a second, but we're reading about the paper now. It was published in the journal Nature Communications, all about this so-called asymptomatic transmission of 9-1 DIVOC. 10 million people looked at, and of those 10 million, only 300 were found to be transmitting of the disease, and that's a very minuscule amount. It's basically statistically zero. So these comments go against the predominant narrative justifying lockdowns, and at the time, the American Institute for Economic Research highlighted that this undermined the last bit of rationale that could be in place for lockdowns, mandated masks, social distancing, and the entire apparatus of compulsion and coercion under which we've been living all year long. Swift to act, the World Health Organization did and declared asymptomatic transmission was a really complex question to answer yet. Well, yeah, we do. It doesn't exist. And I would love it if there's more researchers that would try to replicate this. Show us how people going to a gym is spreading this virus. There was one gym in New York State that took their case to their Supreme Court in the state of New York, and they won their. I'll probably do a highlight of this maybe on Ask Me Anything on Friday, but I have a story about this case where they said, hey, it's not fair that you've got to shut down. You have no evidence that we're spreading this virus. I know Ian Smith over in New Jersey, same thing with his gym. There's a lot of businesses that are like, enough is enough. Like, you're pointing the fingers at restaurants and gyms and movie theaters as spreading this virus, but there's no evidence of it. And their justification has been this asymptomatic transmission. The World Health Organization goes on to say, I think that's a misunderstanding to state that asymptomatic transmission globally is very rare. It's only referring to a small subset of studies. However, this new study out of Wuhan seems to present solid scientific evidence that asymptomatic transmission is not just rare, it doesn't exist at all. Given that it found no evidence that the identified asymptomatic positive cases were infectious, The study raises important questions about why we're still in lockdown anywhere. Is this important, guys? Like, I think this is so important. We need to get it out there, and we need people to understand the justification they're making for locking people down in their homes and making you wear a mask and making you socially distance is all predicated on this notion that there is an asymptomatic transmission of DIVOC. What if there's not? And if there's not, the resolution has to be, if you are sick, stay home. If you are sick, put a mask on. If you are sick, stay the hell away from me. But that's been the notion all along, long before 9-1 DIVOC came along. If you're sick, feeling feverish, don't get out in public. But if you're out in public and you feel good and you don't have any symptoms, your risk of transmitting it or passing it on, if you're a silent asymptomatic transmitter, it is so friggin' low, it's not even funny. And yet that's where we are. That's how they have justified staying down. And I don't know about you, but if this kind of research gets out there more in the mainstream of public consciousness, and they know that we've been lied to, there's going to be an uprising, and it ain't going to be pretty. Commenting on the study, one publication noted that all of the current lockdown regulations, mask wearing, social distancing decrees are all based on a complete fallacy of false assumptions. The evidence presented in the study shows that very rare actually means never. And the asymptomatic spread just doesn't happen ever, ever, ever. Such a large, as it should be, huge news over the news, you guys. It should pave the way to open. Texas and Florida has had this right all along. Sweden has had this right all along. Open up businesses, protect the vulnerable, isolate those who are actually symptomatic, and let the rest of the people live their lives. How hard is this, right? Media reports have been virtually non-existent about this study, and they've ignored all the facts. The lockdown lobby ignores whatever contradicts this narrative, preferring unified anecdotes over actual scientific study of 10 million residents in the hotspot of the disease we're trying to manage. These recent findings should enable society to reopen once more. Without asymptomatic transmission, the whole basis for post-curve flattening lockdowns, life should resume, and we can take comfort in our normal intuition that healthy people can and should get out with no risk to other people. We keep hearing we should follow the science. The claim is so tired by now because we now know what's happening. With solid evidence that asymptomatic spread is nonsense, we have to ask, who is making these decisions and why? And it's great questions. Like, at the end of the day, justification that there's asymptomatic spread of 9-1 DIVOC, and there's now a study that's showing that's a bunch of crap. The house of cards goes crumbling down. And if it's not true, how are they going to justify keeping us locked down? I have a feeling that if the people keep pushing back on this, and if enough people keep pushing back on this, there will be enough cases that could go to the Supreme Court and end kind of this. Because all these state Supreme Courts are ruling in favor of people being willing to do business as they see fit, being willing to not require a mask, being willing to not be locked down and closed down. This has ramifications and ripple effects that go far beyond just wear a mask, far beyond, well, we need to protect each other, we're all in this together. No, this is much deeper than that, which is why this study is so important. So let me look at the actual study. Post-lockdown SARS-CoV-2 nucleic acid screening in nearly 10 million residents of Wuhan, China. And again, this was published in the journal Nature Communications. Let's see if there's anything in here. They do like a quick little overview of 9/1 DIVOC, how China got hit the hardest because they were the origination, So they looked at all the eligible people in Wuhan. This was interesting. So the 10 in this study, that was 94% of the population of that city. So they basically tested the whole freaking city. And of those 10 million people, 300 were the ones that was the number, 300. And it was such a minuscule amount. So that's really interesting that it was almost all of the population. And none of them, when they tested them initially, had the screening of 9/1 DIVOC, and then 300 asymptomatic cases came out with a detection rate of 0.3, which was just minuscule. And then nobody got 9/1 DIVOC. And so let me look in the discussion period to see if there's anything. Previous studies showed asymptomatic individuals infected with SARS-CoV-2 were very infectious and might subsequently become symptomatic. Compared with symptomatic patients, asymptomatic infected persons generally have low quantity of a viral load and a short duration of viral shedding, meaning your ability to spread it to other people, which would decrease the transmission of SARS-CoV-2. In this study, virus culture was carried out on samples from asymptomatic positive cases, and there was no visible and viable SARS-CoV-2 virus in anyone. That's the take home, guys. They tried to contact trace all of these people that were asymptomatic carriers of 9/1 DIVOC. They tried to find anybody, even one that would have the transmission of the virus as an asymptomatic carrier. They couldn't find one. It's just not happening. All close contacts of the asymptomatic positive cases were tested, and every single one of them were negative, indicating positive cases detected in the study were unlikely to be infectious at all, because they weren't. There was a low repositive rate in recovered 9/1 DIVOC patients in Wuhan. Results of virus culturing and contact tracing found no evidence that these recovered 9/1 DIVOC patients were infectious at all. In other words, once they had the antibodies, they weren't going to be able to reinfect people. They weren't. A study in Korea found no confirmed 9/1 DIVOC cases, monitoring 790 contacts of 285 cases. The official surveillance of recovered 9/1 DIVOC patients in China also revealed no evidence on the infectiousness of any of these cases. So, see if there's anything else in here. Findings from this study show that 9/1 DIVOC was well controlled in Wuhan at the time of the screening. After 2 months since the screening program in August, there were no newly confirmed 9/1 DIVOC cases in Wuhan. Further testing of SARS-CoV-2 in samples collected from market environment settings in Wuhan were conducted, and there was no positive results of the 53,000 samples in the market. This study has several limitations, so let's take a look at that. First, it was a cross-sectional screening program, and they're unable to assess the changes over time of the asymptomatic positive people. Second, although a positive result of nucleic acid testing reveals the existence of viral RNAs, some false negative results were likely to have occurred, in particular due to the relatively low level of virus loads in asymptomatic infected individuals, inadequate collection, and limited accuracy of the testing technology. We've talked about this, where they have to amplify of those PCR tests. They have to amplify the results in order to be able to see enough of it to justify making it a case. And that's been the problem with PCR. Again, I'm going to do a whole Jimmy Rants just on that PCR test, because there's so many flaws with it that you need to know about. Probably next week. Although the screening program provided no direct evidence on the sensitivity and specificity of the testing method, a meta-analysis reported a pooled sensitivity of 73%, using the throat swabbing testing of 9-1 DIVOC. Testing kits used in the screening program were publicly purchased by the government, and these kits have been widely used across China and other countries. Multiple measures were taken to possibly minimize having a false negative. For example, standard training was provided to health workers for sample collection. The experiment procedures, including specimen collection, extraction, PCR, were all according to the guidelines. Anyway, so forth and so on. It just shows that they did their due diligence with the materials that they had. And this is how we're measuring 9-1 DIVOC in people right now, is doing this PCR test and similar types of testing. Although there were no official statistics, a number of migrant workers and university students left Wuhan before the lockdown, joining their families in other cities for the traditional Chinese New Year. Therefore, it is likely that most non-participants were not in Wuhan at the time of the screening. The main objective of this screening was to assess the risk of 9-1 DIVOC in residents actually living in Wuhan after the lockdown. Therefore, the estimated positive rates are unlikely to be materially influenced by non-participation of those residents not in Wuhan. Moreover, people who left Wuhan were the target population for monitoring in other areas. Although no official statistics show the positive rate of the testing in the area, there was no report that showed a higher positive rate of testing than what we found in our study. In summary, the detection rate of asymptomatic positive cases was very low, 0.3, and there was no evidence that the identified asymptomatic positive cases were at all infectious. These findings enabled decision makers to adjust prevention and control strategies, and further studies are required to fully the impact and cost effectiveness of the screening of SARS-CoV-2 on the population's health behaviors, economy, and society. So, and what you may not know is in China, they have been open for a little while. Like they've opened everything up. And meanwhile, most of the rest of the world are having some kind of lockdown, some kinds of restrictions, some kind of wearing masks and socially distancing, and you're not allowed to live your life. What do you think about this? Like, we have now a study that is pretty much confirming we don't have asymptomatic transmission of 9-1 DIVOC. So why again are we locking people down? Why again are we requiring people that have no signs of illness to be putting on a mask? Why again are we socially distancing and being taught to have the holidays together? By the way, did anybody not have Thanksgiving or not have Christmas with your family because you were fearful of this or because you were told about the asymptomatic transmission? I hope not. I hope you got to see family and be with family and do all the everything. That would be concerning if you decided not to. But I respect people's decisions about what they think is best for them. And at the end of the day, that's what this means. It's like, if you're in fear of this thing, stay locked up on your own, keep wearing a mask, keep on socially distancing and doing all the things that you think are going to protect you and your family. And let those people who choose not to wear a mask, choose not to lock down, choose to live their life, to go ahead and live their life. Like, there is no asymptomatic transmission, so why are you scared? Why again would you be scared if there's no asymptomatic transmission? At this point, stay away from the person sneezing and coughing. Like, is anybody else neurotic when you're in a store and you feel a sneeze coming on? You're like, oh crap. Oh crap. Oh. I hope nobody heard that, because it's like you don't want to freak. And that's kind of where we are now. But I definitely want to see what you guys have to say. We're going to go here first over to Instagram. And if anybody ever talks to me on Twitch, we'll go to Twitch next. Please talk to me. I see there's people on there. Just say hi, say something. Then to Facebook, and finally over to YouTube. Got a big audience today. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. See what you have to say here. Prague Queen, wow, you're so right about the logic on the vaccinated now being asymptomatic spreaders. Yeah, if they've got it in their system, they're now asymptomatic. for 9-1-DIVOC. They are. How is it possible to count it and track correctly, though? Exactly, Kat. I agree. How do you count it? I don't know. Cariana says, I'm baffled by all the fear. You can't run from a virus. You can't hide from it. Heck, there's evidence they even spread via global winding systems. Immunity is your only chance. Yeah, I was just talking to Dr. Eric Westman and Amy Berger about their new book, End Your Carb Confusion. This will be on the Live and La Vida Low Carb show next week. I have my interview with them. And I asked that question of, shouldn't we be trying to help people improve their host? Because we're all going to be exposed to this eventually. And he's like, absolutely. Like, metabolic health is everything. And if you don't improve your metabolic health, how can you possibly have good immunity? So he was in concurrence with my call. We need to be improving our host, and a ketogenic diet is helpful. Targeted supplements are helpful. And like you guys that follow me all the time, I've been taking very, very high dose vitamin D on a daily basis since this thing hit in March. So since March, except for during the summer months when I cut down on it, but since March, I've been taking about 25 to 30,000 IU of vitamin D3, K2 a day. And I know that it has helped keep me pretty optimal and pretty protected through all this. Not hating it. Paul says 60.8 million cases in 2009. 2010, no peep from anyone about masks or lockups. Yeah, everybody seems to conveniently forget about the former coronaviruses. And heck, the seasonal flu has pretty much flatlined. Did 9-1-DIVOC cure the seasonal flu? Because I'm not hearing about any cases of seasonal flu, and they're not reporting them on the CDC website. So no cases of seasonal flu anymore, but 9-1-DIVOC is the pandemic? Something doesn't add up. So I had normal Thanksgiving and Christmas, just like I always do, no fear. Yeah. And I don't think you were alone. We had record travel over the Christmas holiday last weekend. There was like over 1 million travelers a day, and then they had not seen those numbers all year long since everything shut down. So I agree with you. I think a lot of people, they did have their normal holiday. I'm glad to hear that you did. All right. Thank you, Instagram. Let me pop over now since Twitch is quiet. I'm going to go to Facebook next. What's up, Facebook? Hope you guys are having a great day so far. Thanks for all the great information. Thank you, Robert. Matt Hancock is a joke over in the UK, says Maxine. Yeah. Yeah, there's politicians. Don't get me started on politicians. Tara lists a whole bunch of diseases that we don't really have a cure for or anything. We still live our lives. Typhoid fever, HIV, Epstein-Barr virus, Clostridioids, difficile, cholera, chlamydia, poliomyelitis. Yeah. And the list goes on and on. Maxine says all of this is exhausting. It is. Which is why I try to be a happy face for you guys and come on here and give you information that arms you, because I do think the discouragement factor is becoming a lot more real now than it has probably all year long for most people, because most of us that have been awakened have been trying to warn people, look what they're doing. If they wanted to control us, if they wanted to take over, then aren't they doing a good job of whatever they would do if this was not really what they say it is? Yeah, this is exactly what they'd be doing. Mitzi says, Dr. Fauci said asymptomatic spread has never been the driver of pandemics. I saw the video. I doubt it can be found now. Oh, I referenced it earlier. That yes, you're right. He did say that. And he says it's possible, but it's not the major driver. But you're right. I media when he said that. It's been many months ago now. Sadly, much science is a whore to the highest bidder. You're right, Mitzi. It is. But I hate that whole, we need to follow the science. And I'm thinking, okay, there is no the science. Like there is science and science on both sides of issues. But it seems like the science they're referring to is the science that promotes our narrative that lets us keep locking you down, keep controlling you. Because there's plenty of science like this one, which is all about asymptomatic transmission. Somebody asked, where do I find this study? Thank you, Stacy. It's in the journal Nature Communications. There is the paper. Nature Communications is the journal. And the title, you could just Google, or excuse me, you could just DuckDuckGo the following title: Post-Lockdown SARS-CoV-2 Nucleic Acid Screening in Nearly 10 Million Residents of Wuhan, China. So that's the name of the study. But if you look up Nature Communications Lockdown Wuhan study, you'll probably find it. But that's where it is. I'm a nurse, so you can imagine just how exhausting it is. Maxine, I could not imagine being in your shoes. And the nurses, I have a hard time right now with nurses because I know you guys are exhausted. I know you're frustrated by all the everything that's out there on the internet about this, and especially with the V word out now. I have heard from quite a few nurses that are upset that I even talk any of this stuff. They're like, oh, you make our jobs harder because we're trying to calm people's fears, but you tell them asymptomatic transmission is not a thing, and they come in and they're all upset and it's all your fault. I'm like, no, I'm sharing the information that helps people make good judgments. And it's like, I'm trying to relieve people's fears so they don't end up in your hospital. So God bless the work you're doing, Maxine, you and others. And there's people like you that have also written and said, oh my gosh, this is just, it's crazy what's happening. So hang in there. Margie said, did you know that they use the HIV assay when testing for 9-1 DIVOC? I know that they, yes, and that they actually have not isolated that when they test with the PCR test, they're not actually testing for 9-1 DIVOC. A lot of people think they are, but they're not. Any remnants, dead or alive, any remnants of any coronavirus. And so, yeah, people don't realize that's what they're doing. Maxine says, I'm not upset. I think what you're doing is amazing. I've been offered the V word numerous times and I've politely declined. Keep going. Well, thank you for that, by the way. Yeah, I saw another video and I posted it on my Instagram stories yesterday of a poor nurse who got Bell's palsy after she took the Moderna V word. And the Moderna V, yeah, she just did that whole little thing in her side of her cheek, and she's got Bell's palsy now. And there's more and more and more of these injuries happening. And tomorrow, is it tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow is when I'm going to address all the with the V word to justify continuing to have these on the market. Remember, the Pfizer and the Moderna V words, they do not have FDA approval. What they have is emergency use authorization. So an EUA is not them saying, yes, we approve of this. Yes, it's safe. Yes, it's everything. It just means, okay, we've got a crisis, and so we're going to allow it to be out there. They've not done the full look into this thing. And if there's enough of these cases of people getting injured by the 9-1 DIVOC V word, then they're going to have to make a decision about whether they actually approve it or not. So just keep that in mind as well. They are pushing this V word on all the healthcare workers. Thankfully, I work remote and don't fall into the category of needing it, says Margie. Yeah, that was my concern before they started administering it to the healthcare workers. Oh, we're going to give it to the healthcare workers first. I'm thinking, what if they give it to the healthcare workers and they're our guinea pigs and they're the ones on the front lines of helping keep people well? and then they start having sickness. Now, I get it. The vast majority of the people who have gotten at least the first shot of the V word, the vast majority of them are doing just fine. And in the studies, most of the people did just fine after one dose. It's the second dose that started causing the problems. And so for these people that had the problems with the one dose, they're not getting the second dose. And so when we have these second doses be administered sometime in mid to late January, are we going to hear about a whole ton of people getting sick? Because that second dose is supposedly a lot stronger than the first. What are they going to do? Because they're doing their darndest to keep all of these injuries happening. And again, we're going to address this one on tomorrow's Jimmy Rants, but it's an interesting aside to this here. All righty. Thank you. Over now to my YouTube channel. What's up, YouTube? Welcome back. Sorry, the last time we were on, I lost you guys. But you're here today. Hello. We just about to ask you about this study. Well, good, Shirley. See, I read your mind. When I was on my interview with Dr. Westman, he noted some study, and it was in my list of Jimmy Rant studies that I was going to go over this week. He's like, wow, do you just have these studies like laying next to you? I'm like, no, I had it in queue for Jimmy Rants, but it shows you how cutting edge I was with the information. So thank you for that. I do try to keep you guys on the cutting edge. Hello. Thank you all for being here. Walker says, Jimmy, fear is how they control weak-minded people, but don't trust any information coming out of a communist-run country, even if it sounds overwhelmingly true. They can't be trusted. Trust me, when I was looking at this study and I saw it was out of Wuhan, China, there were like red alerts in my head, Walker. And so I suppose there is something to keep in the back of your mind with what you're saying, but this is the evidence we have. So I appreciate that, and I agree with you. I'm there with you in spirit, but that's why I want to see it replicated in America. Let's go to the hot spots of America and let's replicate this same study, and let's do the contact tracing. Let's see if anybody gets sick, see if anybody transmits it asymptomatically. So I agree with you, but at least they have shown, at least in the study they did, that it's just not transmitting. Anyone here who hasn't subscribed and hit the bell, please do. Oh, thank you. Thank you, William. So by the way, if you're watching this on the replay and you're like, I didn't get a notification for this on YouTube, YouTube did something screwy with my account a few months ago. I think they were trying to throttle my audience. And so if you will unsubscribe from my channel, then resubscribe and then hit the bell, it should change it back so you get notifications. They turned it into a kids category, and they don't send you notifications on kids videos. And so I don't know why they did that, other than to try to, number one, piss me off. It worked. And number two, to throttle my audience a little bit. So if that's you and you're watching this, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and then hit the bell to subscribe. You'll get every time I go on Jimmy Ranch, you'll see the episodes. Happy to hear you about this. Thank you, Abel. Happy birthday and almost New Year. Yes, almost New Year. Be here Friday. Laura says, have you heard of the prophylactic protocol of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine? I have. And I think there are a lot of that could be used prophylactically. I've been using vitamin D as a prophylactic pretty much all year. Those of you that are non-scientific, prophylactic just means preventative. And so, yeah, I have Demisphere, zinc. Yeah, there's a lot of things that are being used prophylactically to try to battle this thing. And even like ultraviolet light has been shown. And I've got another story I'm going to share, or I shared on my stories on Instagram, where if it's a certain level of ultraviolet light, they can kill SARS-CoV-2 within 30 seconds and it's gone. And so they could implement those into schools, and they could put it like at the point of entry of the air ducts for like air conditioning and heating, and they would basically light up the air before it starts blowing into classrooms, so then whatever is in the air would get killed. There's so many solutions here that they're not looking at. All right, thank you, YouTube. Find your post showing someone doing research that Tiffany Dover actually died. So Tiffany Dover is that nurse that collapsed. Yeah, there was this guy who did it. If you go on YouTube and you just type in her name, type in her name, there are a lot of people who have kind of looked up death records. She lived in Alabama, and looked up death records and was like, look, we found her. We've confirmed like who her kinfolk are on her Facebook page. And then we reference it, and it shows that she died last week. So I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, at this point, there's a lot of like craziness out there, and I try to stay away from the crazy and only post things that I think are thought-provoking. But it is odd that they would not do a press conference that shows her on camera saying, "Hey guys, I hear about you thinking that I'm gone. No, I'm alive and well. Here I am. Thank you for being concerned about me." And then that would end the rumors. But they haven't done that. So that's why the internet persists with those kinds of things. Margie says, it seems like they are trying to wipe out the people taking care of the sick. That's just stupid. Give it to the politicians instead. Yeah. Well, there are some politicians taking it as well. I saw AOC took it. Obviously, Vice President Mike Pence took it. I've seen various people taking it. And so it's interesting. Dr. Kroll studies have shown that none of the treating hospitals have any symptoms of flu. Interesting. Cool. But guys, I try to bring you cutting edge information as it comes out, and this is a hot off the presses carriers of SARS-CoV-2. They don't exist. So what do we do with that? How do we handle this? I think it's a call for American researchers to step up and try to replicate this study, as Walker shared. Chinese study, so can we trust it? I get that sentiment. The resolution to that is, come on, American researchers, step up to the plate and let's do this. Go to the epicenter where we have cases. And in fact, Dr. Westman, when I was interviewing him, just before I got on Jimmy Rants, I was interviewing him. And he said, yeah, we wanted to do a study of 9-1 DIVOC, but we didn't have enough patients. There were not enough people who had 9-1 DIVOC for them to do a study on them. And so that's kind of the problem as well. So this is a big, huge problem, and hospitals are overrun with patients. That's what they keep telling us. Oh, ICU is just full of 9-1 DIVOC patients. Oh, all right, well, that's where we need to go. But the reality of the medical professionals, at least in my life, is that's just not what's happening. So hang in there, you guys. There's a lot more to say about all of this, but hopefully this armed you with some pretty good information here today on Jimmy Rants. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, engage live in the content. We have a good time on the show. We're right here on Jimmy Rants over on Instagram. Go follow me there. We go live. So be there, be square. We also simulcast on YouTube. Thank you all for being here today. If you miss a live, you can watch on IGTV at Jimmy Rants Instagram page. It's also up over on YouTube. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. Finally, pop on over to the official website. It is JimmyRants.com, where you can see all the past episodes of this here show. And come back tomorrow. We do have a great topic all about what are they going to do with all these people getting injured by the Pfizer and Moderna V words? What are they going to do? So I've got some questions about that. Bring your questions and bring your interaction back tomorrow, and we will see you then at 11 a.m. Bye. All right. Done and done. Thanks for the update. You're welcome, William. Linus Tech Tips and couple others here on YouTube use multiple supercomputers to create a V-word. Evidently works somewhere. All right. Well, guys, thank you for being here today. It was a lot of fun. It's always fun to join you guys here on the show. We're going to sign off of Twitch here real quick. Bye, guys. All right. Did it end? Now it ended. End stream. Yeah, that's a weird format. And I'm trying desperately to get people to go over there because literally I've yet to have one single comment on Twitch. I see people on there, but they don't comment. So I don't know if it's me that I'm not doing something, but it just says, welcome to the chat. And then there's nobody chatting. Anywho. Well, thank you guys for being here. We will be back tomorrow and we'll see you then. Bye, guys. Bye, YouTube. Appreciate you being here.
Hello, Facebook. Welcome.